playing it because I like it that much.
We will see if Olivia can handle that request, because she is the our DJ, the music maestra. Anyway, I am delighted to welcome you to day 2 of the Senior Heart Song Summit. Day 1 was just amazing, and I expect that day 2 will just build on that great start that we had, where we had our hearts stirred and our hopes and dreams made a little bit closer and a little more accessible. Our guest today, our first presenter, is Dawn Hancy. And Dawn is someone who I have enjoyed and appreciated meeting with for the last, Dawn, one of these days we're actually going to have to figure out when we actually began meeting, but we started meeting weekly in an intentional alchemy mastermind several years ago at least, and have been supporting and cheering each other on in the work that each of us is doing. On a more professional note, Dawn Hancy is a Reiki master teacher, a spiritualist lay pastor, a feminist genealogist, and her historian, as well as a founder of Essential Arts. She loves to help empower people with compassion, encouragement, challenge, and education. And she believes we are on the cusp of launching a movement of our own conscious creation where all may flourish together in peace. Please welcome Dawn Hancy with her presentation, A New Renaissance, Telling the Old Story into the New. Over to you, Dawn.
Well, thank you, and welcome to the New Renaissance. As Steve said, we are learning to tell the old story into the new. And in that light, I'd like to share a 3-strand story crafted from a very personal current chapter in progress, lineages and legacies that reach back over centuries, and a planetary tale that's yet to unfold and to which you can contribute. It's a tale of 3 interweaving threads, 3 essential arts: the essential healing art of Reiki, the essential historical art of genealogy, and the essential bardic art of story, coming together at the intersection where belief and reality blend. For what is reality but history, both the past we remember or learn from others, and the history we're making even now in this present moment, as well as the history that will be woven in the future from the threads we now spin. And what is history really but story? The stories we tell ourselves about ourselves may be the most important of all, and they're often unspoken and remain unarticulated and undocumented. We may feel there is no valid story without an external audience, but in my experience, I can easily be the listener and the teller, as well as a few other characters, both on stage and in the audience. Far from feeling fragmented, this allows me to integrate various aspects of myself that are simply different from one another, but still connected. The stories we tell each other are, of course, the foundation of our shared reality, from family history to nationalism to transformational planetary movements. They all have plot, characters, setting, style, and action, don't they? Isn't that life? An essential element of our stories is our voice, individually and collectively, whether that's the sound emitting from our throats or a disembodied spirit that speaks from a certain time, place, idea, or identity. When we engage our voice consciously with the intention of transforming the story itself and therefore our reality to manifest our heart's vision and sing our heart songs, we are telling the old story into the new. And this practice can even transmute that which seems impossible to something attainable. For sometimes impossible is just a story we have come to believe. So I would like to share with you now some excerpts from the story of my voice. The current chapter in the story of my voice started with a pain in the neck literally. I went to a chiropractor I had met through a mutual friend and colleague who was a local midwife because I had a kink in my neck. I thought I'd need maybe a couple of adjustments, but after x-rays, posture photos, finger clamps, and other tests, I ended up with a year-long treatment plan I'm now in the middle of. I learned that not only did I have too much of a curve in my lower back and almost none in my neck where it should have been, I also have 2 vertebrae in my neck that are fused and always have been. I was born that way, and it's not necessarily a problem, but it means that it's even more important for me to take care of that curve that should be there, the bones and joints, muscles and ligaments I'm now learning about that I never even thought of. This was a previously untold and unknown part of my story, the story of my very formation and incarnation into this life. I would never have known it if not for reaching out to someone else for support, someone with an x-ray machine, as it turns out, and to become part of my story. Even though I do a bit of yoga, core voice practice, daily self-Reiki healing energy work, and other self-care practices, I still need support at times, and I teach my Reiki students this as well. We do need to take great care of ourselves, and also we are all meant to need each other, which is a beautiful thing. As I said, the fusion of the vertebrae doesn't exactly cause any problems itself, but combines with other factors like tension, balance, ways of moving, etc., to cause misalignment, affecting my neck, my throat, and my voice, as well as my posture, appearance, and who knows what else, eyes, sinuses, emotions, energy level. I'm excited to see what results from the combination of self-care and support, chiropractic adjustments, and Reiki self-practice, as well as receiving cranial, sacral, and polarity work, doing exercises, and using an orthotic device. It's helping me realize that I am moving from an old story of how hard I have to work as a singer to bring my best voice forward, to rethinking that maybe there has been a physical reason why I'm not always happy with how my voice sounds or what I have to do to get it into decent shape, but this can change. I am hopeful that loosening the ligaments in my throat and restoring the natural curve to my neck will help my singing voice become more easily accessible and more pleasing to me. I am open to rewriting the story of what I believed about myself and my voice. In the evolving story of my musical voice, I've gone from being a Cleveland Orchestra chorus soprano, taking lessons and practicing every day between weekly rehearsals or more, leading up to multiple concerts every year, decades ago, to now creating simple songs for my own contemplation and leading the singing for my spiritualist community on Zoom, which are also very richly rewarding, if less technically demanding and less prestigious, which is okay. My voice is generally less focused in music and singing now, and more in creating my business, Essential Arts, which is a way of reimagining institutions like education and healthcare to be more empowering, creative, and holistic. I'm singing my heart song in a different way, with music being just one of the essential arts, along with my other passions, some of which I'll share with you in a moment. If you were with us for the last Sing Your Heart Song Summit in June, you may remember me as the chorus girl, not only for the story about being a classically trained choral singer, but also for talking about all of our voices coming together in this summit to create a beautiful chorus of individuals harmonizing in our uniqueness. When I mentioned learning while on tour in Wales that 2 Welshmen make a chorus, they're so fond of singing, we found out that Sherry's grandfather was a Welsh tenor as well. Because as usual, as I'm continually finding out, the ancestors are always leading us, beckoning us, bringing us together, sometimes playing tricks on us, and even asking us for help with healing and carrying on their legacy. So that's where our story takes us today, to a loom where we weave the threads of song, history, family, and healing. But first, I'm going to unspool a bit of a silly story about being a chorus girl, because I never was one, not really. The closest I got was the absurd notion that as a high school student, I should try out for a chorus line at the college in my town, which had a wonderful music conservatory and theater arts department. I was involved with the youth music program there. I had acted a little in school. I was Mrs. Cratchit in A Christmas Carol, and had virtually no dance training other than what a friend occasionally showed me from a few of her ballet lessons. I had no idea that I was decidedly unqualified. I just thought it would be fun and somehow convinced myself that I might even have some kind of a chance, which of course proved to be totally untrue. But I did it. I prepared, I auditioned, and I didn't get a part. But look what I did get, a story. And I still have that. I also learned a couple of dance steps that everyone else was obviously already familiar with, which I've now forgotten, and got some audition experience, which I suppose is worth something. And if I remember correctly, my mother actually drove me to the tryouts, which means she might have thought it was worth doing, or at least she didn't stop me, which means a lot to me now as I look back. So I encourage you to go ahead and support someone else's impossible dream. The reason I tell this story here is because sometimes it's better if we don't know any better and just follow our heart's song. I have actually succeeded at things that others didn't think were possible, or at least in my league, just because I said, why not, and went for it. Like going to a job interview while on vacation in Vermont, getting the job and moving here 2 months later, which was also 2 weeks after getting married in Ohio. Why not? So go ahead and be a chorus girl in your imagination if you want to, or whatever seems kind of crazy, but maybe there's a tiny chance and you may end up with something of value, even if it's not what you started out after. Music is in my blood, you see, at least in recent generations, including my mother and her sister and mother, but I don't know if my earlier ancestors were musical. I suspect they were, however, because I seem to be carrying so many other threads of their lives, sometimes in surprising ways and combinations. The Hanlon line of my father's Irish ancestors, my last name's Hansey, and these are Hanlons, and the Hanseys are Swiss, so it's a little confusing, but anyway, the Hanlon line of my father's Irish ancestors are the ones I suspect are largely behind my drive to bring forth these stories, bards that they would naturally be coming from the Emerald Isle, right? They're perhaps not the most distinguished members of my family tree, but I picture them as storytellers in the Irish tradition. I feel like they want not only their own, but all the stories of my family to be told, and others as well, many others. They are one of the family branches that has been calling me to various places throughout my life. I hear that the recording stopped. Do you want me to pause? I guess I'll keep going.
Well, we lost Steve. Steve is not on here?
Oh, I see that.
Perhaps wait a few moments just that he can get back. I'm sure there he is.
Or maybe his
I can hear
internet
you.
kicked him out. I know I was having trouble with internet for a few days.
We booted Steve off.
He's back.
Steve, are you recording?
We'll get a little notice, I guess, when he does.
Shoot. My computer just crashed. Doggone it. It is supposed to be live streaming onto YouTube, if nothing else, right now.
Yeah.
Does that show on in
Yes.
your okay. And I will see if I can resolve what's going on with my computer and get actually Olivia or Irma, are either one of you as co-host, can you record to your computer?
I'm showing that I can record to the cloud, but then where does it go after that? Is it my cloud or
It'll
your
go
cloud?
to my account. I think it'll go to my account, but we can resolve
Go
that
to
after.
your account? Okay, so record to the cloud anyway?
Yes.
All right,
Just
here we
in case.
go. And we're back.
Thank you, everybody. I'm loving what you're sharing, Dawn. I didn't know all this about you. It's wonderful to hear all the pieces of your story.
Don't we all just have so many that I find as I get older and time goes on, like, oh, I'm going to pull this one off the shelf. Totally forgot about it, but look where it fits now. So that's really what I've been doing to prepare for this. So I appreciate the opportunity to, once again, contemplate what does this mean? Of course, I know story is near and dear to your heart, being, one of the aspects of singing your heart song. So managing to weave several together here. So I'll just kind of pick up where I left off. I don't think you really missed much of anything, Steve. I was just starting to talk about my Irish ancestors. So I'll just repeat a little bit of that. Yeah, the Hanlon line of my father's Irish ancestors are the ones I suspect are largely behind my drive to bring forth these stories, bards that they would naturally be, coming from the Emerald Isle, right? They're perhaps not the most distinguished members of my family tree, but I picture them as storytellers in the Irish tradition. I feel like they want not only their own, but all the stories of my family to be told, and many others as well. They are one of the family branches that has been calling me to various places throughout my life, where I later learned that I lived where they lived. I had no idea I was related to any Hanlons, let alone that they had settled in the Tremont neighborhood of Cleveland, only that I wanted to get out of the suburbs and live in the inner city. Go figure. Keep in mind, I'm also descended from Bohemians, literally from what is now the Czech Republic. So I ended up there just as the artists and musicians, not in the Czech Republic, but in the Tremont neighborhood of Cleveland, just as the artists and musicians were proliferating, and you could still get a cheap apartment, though the tires might be stolen off your car at night. So just before gentrification moved in with townhouses and valet parking, and we moved on. But in my day, it was full of art galleries, jazz, and performance art. And it was there that I had my son and met my husband, in that order, and for whom I am so deeply grateful. Those were interesting times, worthy of the most hearty and legendary Irish passions, I must say. But it's the English Puritans of my family history who settled several towns in Vermont, right in the area where I live now, and I hope never to leave. They came through places like Framingham and Worcester, Massachusetts, both places I also lived when I was a nanny, just turning 20. I don't know if they were musical, but they were both highly literate and religious progressives, traits which I admit I carry on in my own way, even if my theology and theirs would definitely not mix. At first, I wasn't too impressed to learn that I'm descended from Puritans. How not cool is that? But now I embrace the essence of what I find in their wisdom and passion. A couple of them are said to have been smuggled onto ships heading out of England in disguise because of their beliefs. That's kind of romantic. And well, they loved books, and I love books. When I see books mentioned in the wills they left behind, I warm with an impulse to try to track them down and see if it's possible to hold a copy of a volume of religious discourse from 300 or 400 years ago that I probably wouldn't really even want to read otherwise, but just to connect with a book that they cherished, that represented intellectual freedom for them. So while I'm not ashamed of them, I don't need to be too proud either. The women often could read and write, but also generally had about 10 children and really no other career options. Some of the men went to Cambridge and Harvard, and others marked their names with an X. I went to college but didn't graduate, so maybe I embody both in a way, although my mother, her mother, and my father's mother, 3 generations of women before me, did graduate from college. So there you have it. And along the way, I ended up being a teacher, a librarian, and a minister. Well, lay pastor of a spiritualist church anyway, and not teaching in classrooms, but in the community, and now on Zoom. I'm also descended from revolutionaries, as in the American Revolutionary War, which is interesting because I always fancied myself a bit of a rebel as well, until recently when I realized that other people have ideas about what the revolution will look like, and I'm not the least bit interested. I'm suddenly surprised to find myself much more interested in protecting our institutions than I used to be, which doesn't mean I don't find fault with them because, oh, I sure do. But I understand that in the scope of history, we aren't backsliding. We haven't lost our golden age of freedom, justice, democracy, and equality. It hasn't happened yet. And we're still creeping and lurching toward it as we struggle daily to crawl out of the miasma of medieval culture and thought. But take heart, we're making progress. It certainly is a moment in history like no other, except that it's like a lot of others in various ways, just never quite in this particular configuration. In fact, I believe that this is a time of great opportunity as well as challenge if we look mindfully to both the past and future. It's a moment of inflection, pivot, transformation. I believe that personal and collective transformation are already powerfully underway and can be guided and amplified from our higher intelligence and our deeper gifts. I believe the new Renaissance can be inclusive and cooperative as we create it together and flourish together. I believe we need a long view, including perhaps the past 500 years, the next 500 years or more, even as we're consciously creating right now in real time. I believe it's time to dream, vision, and hope right now, while we've got these incredible resources, access to almost literally all the knowledge of all times and places that have ever existed at the touch of a button. It may seem impossible to create such a huge vision from such a time of chaos, but remember the chorus girl? No, remember the lowly library assistant who had the audacity to get hired as the director in a small Vermont library that, as it turns out, was probably named for a relative of my ancestors, Ainsworth Public Library. They really just do turn up everywhere. I just had to be willing to rewrite the old story of who is a librarian, coming from Ohio, where being a real librarian required a master's degree that I don't have. So many of our obstacles can simply sound like, oh, that's not me, and then we give up. I didn't know that in Vermont, a library director may also be the only person working in a one-room library, though I had an assistant, as it turns out. I was the one reading at story time, checking out books, meeting with the board, curating the collection, besides answering reference questions and everything else. But in the news story, I was a real librarian. Impossible so often really does depend on the story. Another story of rewriting what is impossible is the biography of Belle de Costa Green, my favorite librarian in history. She was probably also not a college graduate, since few women were at the turn of the century, but she was working at the Princeton Library when she got hired by J.P. Morgan to build and curate his personal collection of literature and art, which quickly became one of the world's finest and has expanded to this day, and which I hope to someday visit in New York City. It's now open to the public. But not only was Belle a woman in an entirely male field where she would literally be the only female person at an auction bidding against the British Library and other powerful collectors, making her the most successful career woman in the world at the time. She was also Black. Most people didn't know this, however, because she and her mother and siblings chose to pass as white, to protect themselves in a very segregated and racially hostile era, and to rewrite the story of their chances to access resources, succeed in life, and even just to survive. The phenomenon of passing is a tragic tale of Reconstruction's failure. Yet her story, the one she wrote for herself, based on her mother's courage to rewrite their entire family history as having Portuguese ancestry that explained their swarthy complexion, impacted the world profoundly by allowing her gifts to shine and her heart song to sing around the world and for over more than a century already. So we can bring this grand vision of huge swaths of history down to a manageable level by starting where we are now and keeping our eyes out for opportunities. Our ancestors, along with spirit guides, intuition, and other helpers, however you look at them, really can help us tell the old story into the new. It's worth taking the time to try to discover who our people are, because eventually, and pretty quickly I've found, we discover that all people really are our people. We're all connected. And by understanding ourselves and our family, we can expand our capacity for understanding others. All our families have characters that are a bit harder to love, or at least to like, incidents that would be more happily forgotten, beliefs that no longer suit us, even shame and wounding that seem impossible to heal. We are the ones who can help facilitate this healing with both the knowledge available to us and the heart songs that we sing to bring forth the power of compassion, insight, and transformation. Some of the power tools I use to build this new Renaissance are the essential healing art of Reiki and the essential historical art of genealogy, interwoven with the essential bardic art of storytelling. This might seem a strange combination at first, but it is possible to connect with the past and the future, both through Reiki healing techniques and family history research, as well as, of course, through story. It may seem impossible in the old story, but both spiritualism and advanced Reiki techniques can enable us to enter into an energetic space beyond time and place, where we can meet a younger version of ourselves or even our ancestors and work to heal the challenges they have passed down to us, often with the gifts we have inherited from them as well. Reiki can provide the energetic container for these very powerful rituals, as well as our own self-healing, which is invaluable in creating a future humanity that is ready to face the challenges we are creating today for our descendants. I always loved reading the Chronicles of Narnia and other magical stories, and always longed so deeply for magic to be real in our world. Now I can write myself into those stories in a way, for I know from experience as well as study and observation that energetic healing is possible. Intuition is our higher intelligence, and we can access guidance from spiritual realms. I used to believe this was just a fictional story, but now, through Reiki training and joining a spiritualist church and other circles that teach what I call practical spiritual magic, I know this story is true. Remember, to our ancestors, the wonders of the internet would have seemed completely impossible, if not possibly evil to some of them, but we're working on that. When not so long ago, though, literacy was still relatively uncommon. And now look what we can do. Using these seemingly miraculous tools to discover our family history can help us relate to our ancestors and distant relatives more as people with lives and identities in their own right. Learning about the places and times where and when they lived enlivens a story that might otherwise be a simple series of names and dates. And we can see ourselves in the big picture of history. It's not just for the textbooks. Family history is not just for proving nobility anymore. It's for everyone. When I worked at the local history and genealogy library in Cleveland, I remember someone getting so excited that they found their ancestor in the court records because there was a record of them spitting on the sidewalk and getting picked up for it. So, everyone has a mixed bag of history, but it's fun to just discover it. Family history is for understanding ourselves and others. We don't have to like what they did or do, or even what we did in the past or earlier in our lives, but understanding is key. There's such a lack of understanding now that leads to so much conflict, where people get divided up into sides against each other, and we don't have to agree, but greater understanding can just turn down the drama, which is the beginning of healing. Family history can help us know more of the facts about specific times, places, and events that may have been just lost in a history class or a textbook. I remember a teacher in maybe junior high school telling me, if there's one thing you remember from this history class, it's the date 1066. You must remember that. It's so important. And for years and years, I remembered the date 1066, but I had no idea what happened then because I lost the whole rest of the story. And now I know that was basically the founding of modern England, William the Conqueror and all that. But anyway, Battle of Hastings, there you have it. But we can connect with our relatives who are alive now also by finding some common ground. Hey, did you know this story? Or what was your memory of that ancestor like, or that person that we both knew who's now passed on? And we can crowdsource our own story, because it's not just our story as an individual. We're part of something larger. And because we have this access to unprecedented amounts of information and systems, we can find more data, we can put it together for greater meaning and decide for ourselves how to interpret it. And we can share with innumerable others and express our story in our own way. To this end, I've started creating a family website where I can share information about my family history research and insights, connect with relatives I know, and meet those that I don't yet know. I hope I will. It's a place to store and share not only writing, but also images, audio, video, and other resources, connecting with each other in real time through blogs, events, calendars, video calls, and groups that aren't on major social media platforms, if you've gotten a little tired of some of those lately, like I have, and reaching out across the ages. If you're interested in creating a family website or learning more about genealogy, you can contact me at connect@essentialarts.net, which is in the chat, and I'll be happy to talk to you about what that might look like for you and your family as well. For each of us and each family has a small piece in the puzzle of humanity. both in history and for the future. And now we have the ability to choose, influence, and co-create our collective story going forward. We're not only singing our own heart songs, but joining in a chorus that's already singing, and stories being written even as they're being told, whether at times they may be more like Mad Libs or Choose Your Own Adventure or Stream of Consciousness. This is our great work, our magnum opus. Now I'd like to invite you to close your eyes or just relax, whatever way that's comfortable for you. And let all the stories and ideas I've shared so far just swirl around in your mind and settle wherever they will. It's a lot of information to take in. You don't need to remember it all. Maybe as you breathe, something is coming forward in your mind that you've heard or something that's inspired you. Just breathe into it. Feel yourself connected with the earth through your feet or through sitting on a chair or wherever you are, through your body. Our bodies are all animated pieces of this beautiful planet that we've shared with every one of our ancestors and everyone else. Connecting with that larger family can make us feel small and insignificant, but it can also help us realize we're not alone. Finding a balance within your body right now. There's been so much information, so much in the mind, storytelling, exploring, learning. Let it settle into your body. Notice where you feel it in your body. Is there some place that is ready to be healed? Or maybe you could just place your hands. We all have healing in our hands. And just give yourself permission to activate that healing system. It's natural. It's already happening. The energy's flowing. Just allow it to grow a little bit. Is there a memory of someone that you miss? Is there an unresolved family situation? You don't even need to put it front and center in your mind right now or call it all up. Just creating a space for healing. Maybe there's a story of a distant ancestor you've heard that you wonder if it's true. Holding space for mystery is a powerful part of the healing as well. Or just holding that safe, sacred space for yourself, for healing and wellness, whatever your optimal wellness is in this moment, finding that balance and equilibrium. And in this centered place, opening to spirit, to your higher self, to your guides, ancestors, angels, earth spirits, whoever's helping you, whoever's guiding you for your greatest well-being and the greatest good of all. Just taking a moment to open, embodying your higher self, embodying these truths, these questions. And now in this space of expanded understanding and awareness, I invite you to consider with me a few questions. And I'll pause after each one to let some clues, if not answers, just arise in your mind gently, or at least for you to create the space for this to happen, allowing it to just unfold naturally. What is the story we tell now that will still be told in 100 years, or 500, or 1,000? What story would you want to be told about the next century or millennium if you could write the script? How can you contribute to a new renaissance co-created consciously for all to flourish in harmony with our human family, the earth, and all her creatures. How does it feel to start or be part of a work that we know will not be accomplished in our lifetime? And what does it mean? What can it mean? What might it be like for you to tell the old story into the new in your life, just as it is right now? What impossible things do you wish were possible? Take a moment to allow yourself to envision them miraculously coming true without having to know how or whether it will happen. Just open the space for it to arise. And again, this is just opening the space and planting the seeds for this very great work, these powerful questions. Perhaps a word or an image has come to you, or perhaps you've just given yourself a moment to just breathe. This is very powerful too. For you are a few, we are a few of the legacy bearers of this new Renaissance. And I'd like to share with you a letter that I have written to all of the legacy bearers of this new Renaissance. Dear legacy bearers, you may not even be aware that you carry a precious gift, the spark of a new era of human prosperity and evolution, for it is your nature. And yet you feel this call towards something unfolding, something beautiful and beckoning that you cannot resist, no matter the cost, no matter that you will not live to see its completion, no matter that you hold only a single piece of the magnificent puzzle being assembled in the collective consciousness. To you past legacy bearers, you ancestors of the post-medieval European Renaissance, I know you weren't trying to create the world we now inhabit, that you could scarcely have imagined even the most normal ways of thinking, personal appearances, or everyday gadgets that we take for granted all too often now. Yet you had glimpses of flying machines that now carry multitudes around the globe in mere hours, palatial halls that now welcome ordinary people to concerts, libraries, museums, and resorts, medicines and procedures that cure millions, or at least make life more bearable for some. I thank you. And yet you also opened the door to immense devastation by weapons of war, by genocide and oppression, by stripping the land of its vital systems and elements, often in the name of exploration, glory, wealth, and power. I forgive you, for it is not my way to judge you, but to learn from you, to embrace this moment of conscious co-creation, to engage mindfully with the cycles of renewal that are perpetual and ubiquitous, and to look ahead with new insight and reclaim old ideals so that we can heal the mistakes and cruelties of the past and prepare the foundations for a safer, healthier, more prosperous future for our descendants, yours and mine. I humbly add my contributions to yours. To the future legacy bearers, you inhabitants of perhaps the next 500 years, who will consider some of the greatest accomplishments and proudest advances of our times as mere child's play, or worse, as terrible and destructive failures. may you also value some of our aspirations and inventions worthy of carrying forward and cultivating further in ways we cannot even envision today, but which are your natural instincts, encouraged by the groundwork we lay for you now from our deepest convictions, our boldest hopes, and most desperate attempts to salvage what we can of both human civilization and Earth's ecosystems, along with our most inspired visions and divine guidance. I wish you greatest success in celebrating and creating a world where all can flourish together. And to the legacy bearers of today, this is you. We can only do this by dreaming on as grand a scale as our eternal souls are able while inhabiting these limiting human suits, and by working away every day from the laboratories of the invisible quantum realm to the awesome and perhaps infinite cosmos. But most importantly, right here, right now, in our daily lives with the people we encounter and the resources available to us. Many of us can literally access virtually all the knowledge throughout history and around the world at the touch of a button in any moment of the day. Those of us who have the opportunity, the skills, and the desire to make a positive impact on the human story must act now while we have the chance, for we don't know when the window may close on any of these resources or opportunities, and our ability to magnify and amplify what we believe is powerful, helpful, and possible, what we sense is the most generous potential of the human family to live together peacefully and in human harmony with our beloved planet, may close. We begin by telling the old story into the new. We no longer have to repeat old lies as gospel while suppressing our innate wisdom. We can now question and cultivate ideas, not merely for the sake of the new and novel, but according to rigorous standards of positive effect and contribution, carefully calculating the consequences we can anticipate while restraining ourselves to the extent that we can in order to mitigate any unintended harm. We can create a story together, a collective chorus of individual voices where all are valued and nurtured. How long has it taken since Paracelsus combined alchemy, herbalism, and the first inklings of modern medicine? Since monarchies began to give way to democracy in some places? Since women were legal slaves to their fathers and husbands? Since the world was flat and sea monsters awaited intrepid travelers at its edge, they thought. When we look at the last 500 years, we can see how much can change in those few centuries. So much that our ancestors of that day would never in their lives have believed could be possible. May it give us hope and inspiration for the next 500 years and the dedication to manifest our ideals and visions from our highest intelligence and ability, working together in compassion for greater understanding, healing, and hope for the future. You, legacy bearers of all times, I salute you. Now, please tell me your story. And I hope you will. I would love to work with you to manifest your optimal wellness, your dreams and visions in this great work of creating the new Renaissance and telling the old story into the new. So a couple of ways that we can continue our exploration together include a complimentary virtual Reiki session. You can treat yourself to relaxation and rejuvenation virtually, which is how I'm practicing now. It doesn't have to be in person. You can discover a modality that's hard to describe, yet remarkably powerful and gentle if this is new to you. Enjoy the benefits of unlocking your healing systems for whatever you need at this time, with no guarantees or cures necessarily, except greater well-being and truth about your current state of awareness and wellness. Reiki often does relieve pain, stress, tension, and anxiety, and promotes calm, peace, natural healing, and intuition. And it's complementary with any other healthcare or spiritual practice. Or we could work together in a family website consultation, also free and complimentary, whether you want to do genealogy research or just connect with family to cultivate and curate your own story individually and collectively. It can be a public or private website, and it's not on any major social media platform. It's independent. I can help set it up according to your intentions and then train you or your team to, do the basic management of it and enjoy it. So please do get in touch. I have my website is essentialarts.net, and you can just email me at connect@essentialarts.net. And I would love to connect with you that way. And I think that we have a few minutes for question and answer. Irma says 4 or 5 minutes. Yeah, yep. So if there are any questions, you can either put them in the chat or perhaps come off mute and participate, or sit and just take it all in. Let the inspiration arise. I know it's a lot, a little chunk of something huge. Any visions for the new Renaissance or inspirations people want to share? Or go ahead and say, wow, feels impossible. Yeah, that's okay. That's when it's time to just be compassionate with ourselves and go, wow, what can I do? Just give yourself some love.
That was so beautiful, Dawn.
Thank you.
And I love that you guided us through that, and just, being open to these questions and letting the clues come in. And what a powerful reminder too, just that, what we do today can impact like the next millennial century, or 500 years, 1,000 years. The stories that we create now can still be told. Like, that is so incredible. It gives me the chills.
Me too. Yeah. Part of the trick is knowing when to, pardon the pun, but zoom in and zoom out. When we get too overwhelmed, just make it smaller. What do I need to do right now? Maybe it's just a little bit of self-care. Okay, hold on with that whole revolution thing. I'm not there yet. Other times it's like, oh, I want to break out of this little place and go somewhere bigger. Yeah.
And, just the way you wove your story, and I really felt like I was traveling through time, like being on the Mayflower ship with the Puritans, and how you're here in Vermont, and it's just, so incredible. And I wonder, wow, like, can I do that? Can I do that for my own family? Because I'm a first generation, of immigrants from Vietnam.
Yeah.
So that needs to be documented.
Absolutely. Your story is so powerful and still, and I have to admit, when I talked about starting kind of a family history library around my own story, I said to my good friend, Steve Garvin, I don't want to make like another monument to white history. And he said, your story needs to be told, as a woman, I actually have 3 adopted cousins as well. And one is Korean. She was born in Korea and came over here to live with my aunt and uncle. Every story has value. Every story has diversity. It's just, we need to honor that as being so important for ourselves. And we're all part of this bigger picture. We're all connected.
And I appreciate that you include the story about passing. There's a new movie on Netflix right now that was just released, directed by Rebecca Hall, about passing. And how that was in her family history. And it's a remarkable movie. It's beautifully done in black and white. So like you even get more of like the subtleties of the actors who are playing. But yeah, so just incredible. So I think your topic is so timely with the release of this movie and all the questions and discussion that can come from it.
Yeah. Yeah. This is the time when we can open those conversations that things our ancestors and earlier just couldn't even talk about, acknowledge. It's real. It's powerful. Well, I really thank each of you for listening and just opening to these questions. And I know sometimes when I get to the end of listening to someone speak about a large subject for a relatively long time and they go, well, any questions? I just sit there like, wow, what even just happened? Like, so taking it all in. So please do just feel free to email me at connect@essentialarts.net later, tomorrow, whatever. Just be like, wait, what was that? Bohemians? What? Puritans? Chorus girl? Like, or hey, I have a story I want to share. I love to hear from you. I love to hear from everyone's story. So definitely feel free to be in touch.
Thank you so much, Dawn.
You're welcome.
I'm curious, are you still holding your, I think it was a Tuesday evening gathering to talk about racism and so forth?
No, our spiritualist church, after the death of George Floyd, started a healing racism group where it's based on the book called Mindful of Race by Ruth King, and I highly recommend that book. It approaches dealing with race and racism from a mindfulness practice point of view. She's Buddhist. She's not teaching Buddhism. It's for anybody, but it gives people a safe, if you wish, sacred but mindful space to have lots of silence, lots of self-compassion, compassion for others. And we did do that for quite a few months, if not a year, just witnessing what is real for us right now in this space.
Thank you.
Powerful way to do it. Yeah. Thanks for asking about that.
And I also endorse that book. I got a lot out of it. And I'm going to stop the recording.
Okay.
Maybe.
I can put that book in the chat too. And also the way that I found out about Belle Costa Green, right? I'm still a librarian. I'm literally giving you book recommendations in the chat. I can't help it. I don't work at a library anymore, but I can't help it. It's called The Personal Librarian. Maybe that wouldn't like catch everyone's attention on the new bookshelf, but I went, wow, cool, what's that? And gosh, who's that by? It's actually by two women. It's a historical account of Belle Costa Green's life. And it's written by a white woman and a Black woman together, which is fascinating too. And if I can come up with their names, I will, but that's the name of that book. And now I'm reading An Illuminated Life, which is also about Belle Costa Green, and that's her nonfiction biography. Always keep learning. That's the key. We don't have to have it all figured out. Just be willing to keep learning.
Olivia, I think you need to stop the YouTube stream.